A poor puppy refused to let go of this bag, and the vet was horrified when he saw what was inside. It starts on a dark street, where a tiny, wounded puppy drags a heavy bag with everything it has, growling, crying, refusing to let anyone take it. When a tired vet finally opens the bag, his hands freeze, because what's inside shouldn't even be possible. And this is only the beginning. Soon, the vet realizes the puppy wasn't just scared. It was protecting something someone wanted gone, something someone was willing to destroy. As strange warnings appear, powerful people close in, and danger begins stalking the vet's every step. Why was this puppy ready to fight for a secret that someone else would kill to bury? And what happens when the vet becomes the next target? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The fluorescent lights hummed softly as Dr. Bram Kessler moved through his small veterinary clinic, checking each exam room one final time before closing. The clock on the wall showed 8:45 in the evening, 15 minutes past closing time. His footsteps echoed in the empty waiting room as he straightened a few magazines and adjusted a chair that had been left askew. Through the front windows, the city streets were already dark, with only the glow of streetlights illuminating the occasional passerby. Bram's reflection stared back at him, a broad-shouldered man with tired eyes and day-old stubble. He hadn't bothered to shave that morning, too busy dealing with an emergency surgery on Mrs. Henderson's cat. The quiet was suddenly broken by the sound of running feet slapping against wet pavement. Bram looked up just as a teenage boy burst into view, nearly crashing into the glass door of the clinic. The boy's chest heaved as he struggled to control what appeared to be a small, dirty dog in his arms. Please help!" The teenager's voice cracked with panic. "The door was locked, but I saw you inside." Bram quickly unlocked the door, his instincts telling him something was very wrong. The boy stumbled in, and Bram could now see the puppy clearly, a trembling ball of matted fur, desperately clutching something in its mouth. "What happened?" Bram asked, keeping his voice calm and steady as he guided them toward an exam room. "I found him in the alley," the boy gasped. "He wouldn't let go of this bag. I tried to take it, but he just growls and holds on tighter." Bram observed the canvas bag the puppy refused to release, old and dirty, with frayed edges and a worn strap. The puppy's eyes were wide with fear, but there was something else there too. Determination. "It's okay, little one," Bram said softly, kneeling beside the exam table where the boy had placed the dog. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you." He reached out slowly, letting the puppy smell his hand. Years of experience had taught him that patience was essential in situations like this. The puppy's trembling gradually lessened as Bram continued to speak in low, soothing tones. "That's it. Good dog. You can trust me." He gently scratched behind the puppy's ears, feeling the tension slowly leave the small body. After several minutes, the puppy's jaw relaxed enough for Bram to carefully take hold of the bag. As he did, he noticed something odd. The bag had weight to it more than he'd expected. And there was something else. A faint sound, almost like a whimper, but not from the puppy. With steady hands, Bram opened the canvas bag. His heart stopped. Inside, wrapped in a thin blanket, was a newborn baby. The infant's skin had a slight bluish tinge, and the tiny chest barely moved with shallow breaths. "Oh my God," the teenager whispered, peering over Bram's shoulder. Bram's medical training kicked in immediately. "Call 911, he ordered, already moving into action. "Tell them we need an ambulance right away." His hands moved quickly but gently as he assessed the baby's condition. The infant was cold, too cold, and barely responsive. While the teenager fumbled with his phone, Bram grabbed clean blankets from a supply cabinet, wrapping them around the tiny body. He checked the baby's airways and positioned the small head to ensure proper breathing. The umbilical cord had been cut recently, but not professionally. This child couldn't be more than a few hours old. "They're on their way," the boy reported, his voice shaking. Do you need me to do anything?" "Stay with the puppy," Bram instructed, not taking his eyes off the infant. He began rubbing the baby's arms and legs through the blankets, trying to warm the tiny body. "Talk to him. Keep him calm." The sound of sirens grew steadily louder. Bram continued his efforts to stabilize the baby, murmuring soft words of encouragement. "Stay with me, little one. Help is coming. Stay with me." The emergency medical team burst through the door minutes later, quickly taking over care of the infant. Bram gave them a rapid assessment of the baby's condition and what little he knew of the situation. As they prepared to transport the child to the hospital, he made a quick decision. "I'm following you to the hospital," he told the paramedics. "This child was brought to my clinic. I need to make sure they're okay." He turned to thank the teenager, but the boy had already slipped away in the chaos. The puppy, however, remained. Despite its obvious exhaustion and a noticeable limp, it stood at attention, watching the baby being loaded into the ambulance. "Looks like you're coming too, buddy," Bram said, scooping up the loyal dog. The puppy didn't resist, but its eyes stayed fixed on the ambulance. As Bram rushed to his car, the weight of what had just happened began to sink in. Someone had abandoned a newborn baby, left it in an alley with only a puppy as its guardian. The thought made his chest tight with a mixture of anger and sadness. But there would be time for those emotions later. Right now, that baby needed help, and somehow he had become part of this story. The ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing into the night. Bram placed the puppy carefully in his passenger seat and started his car. As he followed the flashing lights through the dark city streets, he couldn't shake the feeling that this night would change everything. The puppy pressed its nose against the window, watching the ambulance ahead of them, still refusing to be separated from its precious charge. In the rearview mirror, Bram could see his clinic growing smaller, the "closed" sign swinging gently in the evening breeze. Less than an hour ago, he had been preparing for another quiet night at home. Now he was racing through the city, following an ambulance carrying an abandoned newborn, with a mysterious puppy as his only witness to the strange events that had brought them all together. The fluorescent lights of St. Mary's emergency room cast harsh shadows as Bram followed the medical team through the sliding doors. The tiny infant, now connected to monitoring equipment, remained eerily quiet. The puppy squirmed in his arms, whining softly as hospital staff directed them to a trauma bay. "Sir, you'll need to wait outside," a nurse said firmly, reaching for the privacy curtain. Bram shook his head. "I'm Dr. Kessler. I stabilized the baby at my clinic. I need to stay with her." His voice carried the quiet authority that came from years of medical practice, even if his expertise was usually focused on four-legged patients. The attending physician, Dr. Martinez, glanced up from examining the infant. "Let him stay. He can give us the initial assessment." She turned back to the baby, her experienced hands gentle but efficient. "What did you observe at first contact?" "Hypothermia, respiratory distress, minimal responsiveness," Bram reported, shifting the anxious puppy in his arms. "The umbilical cord was recently cut, unprofessionally. I'd estimate the baby is less than 6 hours old." The medical team worked quickly, warming the infant and checking vital signs. As they cleaned the tiny girl, Dr. Martinez's expression darkened. "These marks on her arms, they're not consistent with typical birth trauma or abandonment." She pointed to several small bruises. "Someone handled this baby roughly before she was left at your clinic." The automatic doors whooshed open again, and the teenager from earlier stumbled in, out of breath. "Doc, I followed you. Thought you might need the puppy's leash and stuff." He held up a worn leather collar and leash. "Found them in the alley." The puppy's ears perked up at the sight of its belongings, but it remained focused on the trauma bay, straining toward the baby with increasing distress. Its whimpers grew louder as medical staff moved in and out through the curtain. "Thank you," Bram said, taking the items. He studied the tag. On the collar, it was worn smooth, except for a few barely legible letters. Ban, and what might have been an address. The click of determined footsteps drew their attention. A woman in her early 30s approached, her sharp features set in professional determination. She held up a badge. "Corinne Lander, Child Protective Services. I need to speak with everyone involved in finding this infant." Bram straightened, still cradling the agitated puppy. "I'm Dr. Bram Kessler. The baby was brought to my veterinary clinic about 40 minutes ago." Corinne's eyes narrowed. "A veterinary clinic? That's an unusual choice for abandoning a newborn." She pulled out a notebook. "Walk me through exactly what happened." As Bram recounted the evening's events, Corinne's questions grew increasingly pointed. She seemed particularly interested in the puppy's behavior and the teen's involvement. The boy, who introduced himself as Marcus, described finding the dog in the alley, already fixated on the bag. "Something's not adding up," Corinne muttered, tapping her pen against her notebook. "This doesn't feel like a typical abandonment case." "Because it isn't," Bram agreed, surprising himself by challenging her. "The baby shows signs of rough handling, but someone also wrapped her carefully in that blanket. The puppy's protective behavior suggests it knows this child." Corinne's expression softened slightly. "At least we agree on that." She turned to a nearby security guard. "I need to see any surveillance footage from the areas surrounding the clinic, particularly the alleyways." While they waited for the footage, Dr. Martinez emerged from behind the curtain. "The baby is stabilizing. She's responding well to treatment, but we're concerned about the pattern of bruising. It suggests she may have been taken by force from her mother." The puppy's whining increased at the mention of mother, and it pawed at the curtain desperately. Bram stroked its head, trying to calm it. "This dog knows something. Its behavior isn't random." The security footage arrived on a tablet, and they huddled around it. The grainy video showed the alley behind Bram's clinic about an hour before the baby was found. A woman appeared, clutching something to her chest as she ran. The puppy, clearly younger and healthier then, followed close at her heels. Two shadowy figures pursued them, but the woman disappeared off camera. Minutes later, the figures retreated. "Stop," Corinne commanded, pointing to the screen. "Zoom in on the woman's face." The security guard enhanced the image, revealing a worn but youngish face framed by tangled hair. "That's Laurel Pike," Corinne said, her voice tight with recognition. "She's been in and out of our homeless outreach program for the past year. Last time I saw her, she was pregnant." The puppy reacted strongly to the name, barking for the first time since Bram had met it. "Banner," Corinne read from the partially visible tag on the collar. "The dog's name is Banner. He belonged to Laurel. I remember seeing them together at the shelter." Before they could discuss this revelation further, Corinne's phone buzzed. Her face paled as she read the message. "Laurel Pike was just found dead in a doorway 6 blocks from here. They're calling it an overdose." Bram felt his chest tighten. That's too convenient. A homeless woman runs through an alley with her newborn, being chased by unknown assailants, and hours later she's conveniently dead from an overdose. "My thoughts exactly," Corinne agreed, her professional demeanor cracking slightly to reveal genuine concern. Laurel was in our program specifically because she'd been clean for months. She was determined to keep her baby. Banner whimpered again, pressing his nose against the trauma bay curtain where the baby lay. The puppy's loyalty suddenly made perfect sense. He wasn't just protecting a random abandoned infant, he was guarding his owner's child. Dr. Martinez joined them again, her expression grave. We found something else. The baby's blood type doesn't match what's listed in Laurel Pike's medical records. Either those records are wrong, or this goes deeper than we thought, Corinne finished. She turned to Bram, really seeing him for the first time. Dr. Kessler, I know this isn't your usual territory, but you're involved now. Someone went to great lengths to separate this baby from her mother, and then Laurel ends up dead. Will you help me figure out what really happened? Bram looked down at Banner, still faithfully watching over the newborn, then back at Corinne. I'm already involved. Whatever happened to Laurel Pike and this baby, they deserve the truth. As if understanding the gravity of the moment, Banner settled at Bram's feet, his eyes never leaving the curtain behind which the tiny infant fought for survival. The puppy's unwavering vigil seemed to embody the promise they were all making, to uncover the truth behind this increasingly disturbing mystery. Dawn was breaking as Bram finally left the hospital, his mind swimming with questions about Laurel Pike and the mysterious baby. The drive back to his clinic felt surreal. The early morning streets empty except for delivery trucks and dedicated joggers. Banner had insisted on coming with him, refusing to stay at the hospital despite his obvious exhaustion. You're as stubborn as I am, aren't you? Bram murmured, glancing at the puppy curled up in his passenger seat. Banner's one good ear twitched in response, but his eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. The clinic's familiar facade came into view, the Kessler Veterinary Services sign catching the first rays of sunlight. Jonah, his vet tech, was already waiting by the door, 2 paper cups of coffee in hand. Figured you could use this, Jonah said, passing one to Bram. His eyes fell on Banner. And who's this little warrior? Long story, Bram sighed, unlocking the door. The short version is he led us to an abandoned baby last night, and I think he might be our key witness in something bigger. Jonah whistled low. A key witness, huh? Well, he looks like he's seen some battles. He crouched down, offering his hand to Banner. The puppy sniffed cautiously but allowed a gentle pat. Banner, Jonah declared suddenly. That's what we should call him, like a battle banner, scared but still standing. The name seemed to fit, and Banner's tail gave a slight wag of approval. They were just settling into their morning routine when the clinic's bell chimed. A man in an impeccably tailored suit stepped in, his shoes worth more than Bram's monthly rent. Dr. Kessler, Gregory Walsh, representing Danner Development. The attorney's smile was practiced, his handshake firm but brief. Mr. Royce Danner was quite moved by your rescue of the infant last night. He'd like to make a substantial donation to your clinic. Bram felt Banner press against his legs, trembling slightly. That's very generous, but how did Mr. Danner hear about this so quickly? Walsh's smile didn't waver. Mr. Danner has his finger on the pulse of our city. He believes in supporting those who help others. He placed a business card on the counter. We're prepared to offer $50,000, enough for new equipment, perhaps some renovations. That's quite specific, Bram observed, keeping his voice neutral. What's the catch? No catch. Though, Walsh glanced at Banner. We would like to take the stray dog off your hands, and naturally we'd appreciate discretion regarding any items that might have been found with the infant. The implied threat was clear beneath the polished veneer. Bram straightened, suddenly grateful for Jonah's steady presence nearby. I'm afraid Banner isn't available for adoption. As for the bag, that's evidence in an ongoing investigation. Walsh's smile tightened. Dr. Kessler, surely we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. Mr. Danner is a very influential man. Then he should understand the importance of doing things properly, Bram replied firmly. Thank you for the offer, but I'll have to decline. The attorney's facade cracked slightly, revealing a flash of cold anger. You're making a mistake, Doctor. Some opportunities don't come twice. He turned sharply and left, his expensive shoes clicking against the clinic's worn linoleum. Jonah let out a low whistle. Well, that was about as subtle as a brick through a window. You okay, boss? Bram nodded, though his heart was racing. Make copies of all our security footage from last night. Something tells me we might need it. The day passed in a blur of appointments and procedures, but Bram couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Banner stayed close, alternating between following Bram and guarding the front door. As evening approached, Jonah insisted on staying late to help close up. You've got that look, Jonah observed as they did final checks. The one that says you're about to do something stupidly noble. Bram managed a small smile. Just being careful. Go home, Jonah. I'll finish up here. Yeah, not happening. Jonah crossed his arms. Whatever's going on, you shouldn't face it alone. The sound of breaking glass shattered the moment. Banner's head snapped up, a low growl rumbling in his chest. The noise had come from the back office. Call 911, Bram whispered, grabbing a broom as the closest weapon available. Jonah nodded, phone already in hand as they moved carefully toward the sound. The office was dark, but moonlight showed papers scattered everywhere, drawers pulled open. A figure in black was rifling through files, cursing under his breath. The canvas bag from last night lay on the floor nearby. Before Bram could move, Banner shot forward with surprising speed. The puppy's teeth found the intruder's hand, biting down hard. The man yelled, trying to shake Banner off, but the little dog held on with desperate determination. Get off, you stupid mutt! The intruder swung his other hand, revealing something metallic that glinted in the darkness. Bram's heart stopped. Banner, down! The puppy released just as the weapon swung past where his head had been. Banner retreated to Bram's side as Jonah flipped on the lights, momentarily blinding everyone. The intruder was already moving, shoving past them toward the exit. Blood dripped from his injured hand, leaving a trail that ended abruptly at the back door. By the time police arrived, he was long gone. He was after the bag, Bram told the responding officers, holding Banner close. The puppy was still trembling, but stood proudly, clearly pleased with his defense of the clinic. And our records from last night. The officers documented the scene, took statements, and promised to increase patrols. But Bram knew the real threat wouldn't come from random break-ins. Someone powerful wanted to erase all traces of last night's events, and they weren't going to stop easily. That's it, Jonah declared once they were alone. I'm installing better security cameras tomorrow, and Banner here deserves a medal, and probably a steak. At the mention of his new name, Banner's tail wagged slightly. Despite everything, Bram felt a surge of affection for both the loyal puppy and his steadfast friend. Whatever was coming, at least he wasn't facing it alone. The break-in had left the clinic in chaos, but more importantly, it had confirmed Bram's suspicions. This wasn't about a simple abandoned baby anymore. Someone with considerable resources wanted to make sure certain truths stayed buried, and they weren't above using force to make it happen. The morning after the break-in, Bram sat in his office surrounded by the aftermath. Papers still littered the floor despite his best efforts to organize them. Banner dozed in a patch of sunlight, his small body twitching occasionally as he dreamed. The puppy had refused to leave Bram's side since the incident, maintaining a vigilant watch even in sleep. A knock at the door made Banner's head snap up, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Bram tensed, but relaxed when he saw Detective Hollis Crane's weathered face through the glass. The detective's gray-flecked hair and tired eyes spoke of someone who had seen too much over the years. "Dr. Kessler," Crane said quietly as he entered, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm to the protective puppy. "Got a minute?" "Of course, Detective." Bram gestured to a chair, noting how Crane carefully closed the door behind him and glanced around before sitting. "Though I thought this wasn't officially your case?" "It's not." Crane's voice was barely above a whisper. "Officially, I'm just checking on a local business after a break-in. Unofficially." He pulled out his phone, showing Bram a photo. "Does this look familiar?" Bram leaned forward, studying the image. It showed a pale blue dress shirt, clearly expensive, with subtle geometric patterns woven into the fabric. "That's what the baby was wrapped in, isn't it?" Crane nodded slowly. "Limited edition, only 50 made, and 20 of those went to one family." He paused meaningfully. "The Danners." "Royce Danner's family?" Bram's mind raced, connecting dots. "The same Danner whose lawyer tried to buy my silence yesterday. His son, Lennox, is particularly fond of this brand." Crane tucked his phone away, his movements deliberate. "He's been in the news lately. Engagement announcement to some society girl. Big wedding planned for next month." Before Bram could respond, another knock echoed through the clinic. This time it was Corinne Lander's determined face peering through the glass. Banner's tail wagged slightly. He had apparently decided she was trustworthy. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, stepping inside. Her sharp eyes took in Crane's presence immediately. "Detective, I didn't expect to find you here." "Just following up on the break-in," Crane replied smoothly, but his meaningful look didn't escape either of them. Corinne closed the door firmly. "Of course. And I'm just checking on our mutual interest in animal welfare." She pulled out her own phone, showing them a photo of Laurel Pike. "Interesting timing, isn't it? Woman dies of an overdose the same night her puppy leads us to an abandoned baby. A baby wrapped in what looks like a very expensive shirt." "Quite a coincidence," Crane agreed carefully. He stood, moving toward the window as if checking the street. "Especially since Ms. Pike was seen arguing with someone in an expensive car last week. Witness described a young man, well-dressed, seemed nervous. But of course, that's just street gossip." Bram watched the interplay between them, understanding dawning. "Lennox Danner," he said quietly. "He was involved with Laurel, wasn't he?" Crane didn't answer directly, but his silence spoke volumes. "The Danners are powerful people, Dr. Kessler. They've made problems disappear before, usually with a combination of money and pressure." "That baby is evidence," Corinne said fiercely. "They can't just make her disappear." "No?" Crane's tired eyes met hers. "Like they couldn't make Laurel Pike disappear, or the clinic's security footage from that night?" Bram frowned. "The footage is safe. We made copies." "Good." Crane moved toward the door. "Keep them somewhere secure. And Dr. Kessler, watch your back. Some people don't take kindly to their secrets being exposed." After he left, Corinne sank into the chair he had vacated. "Well, that was enlightening and terrifying." "The baby," Bram said suddenly. "She's Lennox Danner's daughter, isn't she? That's why they're so desperate to cover this up." Corinne nodded slowly. "A scandal like this would destroy their perfect family image, especially with Lennox's wedding coming up." She ran a hand through her hair in frustration. "But proving it is another matter. They'll fight any DNA test, and Laurel can't testify now." "She's so small," Bram said softly, thinking of the tiny girl in the hospital. "She doesn't even have a name yet." "The nurses have been calling her Hope," Corinne admitted. It seemed fitting. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they were up against settling over them. Banner padded over, resting his head on Bram's knee as if sensing his distress. "We can't let them win," Corinne said finally. "That little girl deserves better than to be erased because she's inconvenient for some rich family." Bram scratched Banner's ears, thinking of how the loyal puppy had protected his clinic. "We won't. But we need to be smart about this. The Danners have money and influence on their side." "And we have the truth," Corinne countered, "plus an unusually helpful detective who seems to know a lot about the family." "Crane's scared," Bram observed. "He knows something, but he can't officially help without risking his career." "Then we'll have to help ourselves." Corinne stood, her determination evident in every movement. "I'm going to check on Hope. Want to come?" Bram looked at the mess around him, then at Banner's expectant face. "Yes," he decided. "I think we both could use some time with her." As they left the clinic, Bram couldn't help but notice how natural it felt to walk beside Corinne, Banner trotting between them. Despite the danger they faced, there was something comforting about having allies in this fight. The baby, Hope, had somehow become a tether connecting them all, drawing them together in her defense. He thought about Crane's warnings, about the power the Danners wielded. But looking at Corinne's determined profile and feeling Banner's steady presence beside him, Bram knew they couldn't back down. Hope needed them, and they wouldn't let her down. The evening shadows lengthened across Bram's clinic floor as he watched Corinne pace, her footsteps echoing against the linoleum. Banner's eyes tracked her every movement, the puppy's scarred face alert and watchful. Detective Crane sat quietly in the corner, his weathered features thoughtful as he observed them both. "Let's lay everything out," Corinne said, finally stopping her pacing. "What do we know for certain?" Bram leaned against the examination table, absently stroking Banner's head. "We have a newborn baby, found in a bag that Banner wouldn't let go of. The bag belonged to Laurel Pike, who died suspiciously the same night. And we have this." Crane pulled out a small evidence bag containing a scrap of fabric. "The shirt the baby was wrapped in, limited edition Harrington Brothers, only sold at their flagship store downtown. Less than 50 pieces made." Corinne's eyes narrowed. "And Lennox Danner bought one?" "3, actually," Crane confirmed. "His credit card records show the purchase 2 months ago, but officially, I never told you that." Banner suddenly perked up, whining softly. His ears twitched toward the hallway leading to the clinic's back entrance. Bram watched as the puppy limped to the door, pressing his nose against it before returning to pace anxiously between them. "He does that every time we mention the baby," Bram observed. "It's like he's looking for her." Corinne pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "I've been going through shelter records. Laurel Pike was a regular at St. Mary's Haven for about 8 months. Banner showed up with her about 6 months ago. They were inseparable." "What changed?" Bram asked. "According to the shelter logs, she stopped coming in about 2 months ago. When she did return, the staff noted she seemed different, scared, and—" Corinne paused, double-checking her notes. "She was pregnant." Crane shifted in his chair. "Timeline matches. The baby couldn't have been more than a day old when you found her, Dr. Kessler." Banner whined again, more urgently this time. He limped to Corinne, pawing at her tablet as if trying to see the screen. The investigator's expression softened as she showed him Laurel's photo. "He knows," she said quietly. He was there for all of it, watching Laurel, protecting her, and now the baby. Bram moved to his desk, pulling out a thick folder. "I've been keeping everything related to the case here. Security footage copies, medical records, photos of the break-in damage. My clinic can be our base of operations. It's private, and I have after-hours access. Dangerous offer, Crane warned. The Danners don't play nice when crossed. They've already tried intimidation, Bram countered. I'm not backing down. Corinne set her tablet down, her expression determined. I have access to city records, social services databases, police reports, everything we need to build a paper trail. And I have 20 years of watching the Danners operate, Crane added. I know their patterns, their weak spots, but I can't move against them officially. They have too many friends in high places. Banner suddenly stood, his tail wagging slightly as he looked between them. It was almost as if he understood they were joining forces, becoming a team to protect the tiny life he'd helped save. We need a name for this operation, Corinne said, her professional demeanor cracking slightly. Something inconspicuous. Operation Banner, Bram suggested, watching the puppy's ears perk up. He brought us all together, after all. Crane nodded approvingly. Keep it simple. We meet here, after hours. No phones, no electronic communications about the case. Everything face-to-face. I'll start deeper background checks on Laurel, Corinne said. There has to be evidence of her connection to Lennox Danner somewhere. I'll quietly talk to some old contacts, Crane added. People who've had run-ins with the family before. There are always witnesses. Most are just too scared to come forward. Bram watched Banner circle the room again, checking each window and door before settling near his feet. The puppy's loyalty was extraordinary, his determination to protect both the memory of Laurel and the life of her child unwavering. We're missing something, he said suddenly. Banner's behavior, it's more than just attachment. He's not just loyal, he's purposeful, like he knows something we don't. Corinne knelt beside the dog, gently examining his scarred face. These injuries aren't all old, some are recent. He was in a fight the night Laurel died. Defending her? Crane asked. Or trying to, Corinne agreed, which means he saw what happened. He might be our only witness to Laurel's last moments. Banner whimpered softly, pressing against Corinne's hand. His eyes, full of intelligence and sorrow, seemed to confirm her words. We need to move carefully, Crane cautioned, standing to leave. The Danners will be watching all of us now. One wrong move could endanger everything, and everyone. Corinne gathered her materials, tucking them securely in her bag. I'll update you both tomorrow. And Bram? She paused at the door. Thank you for giving us a safe place to work. After they left, Bram sat in the quiet clinic, Banner's head resting on his knee. The puppy's presence was comforting, a reminder of why they were risking so much. This wasn't just about exposing corruption or seeking justice. It was about protecting an innocent life and honoring the woman who had died trying to save her child. Tomorrow they would begin their careful investigation, each bringing their unique skills and resources to the cause. But tonight, in the peaceful darkness of the clinic, Bram simply sat with Banner, two guardians united in their determination to uncover the truth. The puppy sighed contentedly, his scarred body relaxing slightly. But his ears remained alert, ever vigilant, as if he knew their real work was just beginning. Together, they would piece together the mystery of Laurel Pike's death, the baby's origins, and the powerful forces trying to bury the truth. Banner's unwavering loyalty would guide them, Corinne's determination would drive them, and Crane's experience would protect them. It wasn't much, just 3 people and a wounded puppy. But it was a start. And sometimes, Bram reflected, that's all you need to change everything. The manila envelope sat innocently on Corinne's desk, but her hands trembled as she reached for it. She'd ordered the DNA panel through proper channels, citing medical necessity for the abandoned infant's care. Standard procedure. Nothing suspicious. But the results inside could change everything. Taking a deep breath, She opened the envelope and began reading. Her face went pale. She read it again, then again, each time hoping the words would somehow change. They didn't. 20 minutes later, she burst through the back door of Bram's clinic, startling both him and Banner. The puppy gave a small whine of recognition before settling back down. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight. "Now." Bram looked up from where he was treating a cat's injured paw. "Give me 5 minutes to finish up here." Those 5 minutes felt like hours as Corinne paced the small examination room, the envelope clutched to her chest. Banner watched her with knowing eyes, as if he understood the weight of what she carried. When Bram finally finished and led her to his office, she couldn't sit still. "I got the DNA results back," she said, laying the papers on his desk. "The baby. She's not just any abandoned child. She's Lennox Danner's daughter." Bram stared at the papers, his face darkening. Laurel Pike was carrying the Danner heir. "Which means she wasn't just some homeless woman who overdosed," Corinne continued, her voice shaking with anger. "They killed her. They killed her because she was carrying his child." Bram sank into his chair, running his hands through his hair. "That's why the expensive shirt. That's why the break-in, the threats, everything. They're trying to erase all evidence that connects them to both Laurel and the baby." "We need to call Crane," Corinne said, already reaching for her phone. The detective arrived within 30 minutes, his weathered face grave as he reviewed the results. "This changes everything," he said quietly, "and puts all of us in serious danger." "We have to go public," Corinne insisted. "This is proof of motive. They killed Laurel to hide the pregnancy." "And they'll kill us just as easily to keep this quiet," Crane warned. "The Danners have people everywhere. Police, hospitals, City Hall. One wrong move and we're all dead." Banner whimpered softly, pressing against Bram's leg. The puppy had barely left his side since the night they found the baby, as if knowing they were all connected now in this dangerous web. "So we just let them get away with murder?" Bram's voice was quiet but fierce. "Let them bury what they did to Laurel? To their own grandchild?" "No," Crane said firmly. "But we have to be smart about this. We need more evidence, more protection. Right now, all we have is a DNA test that could easily disappear, and 3 people who could just as easily have unfortunate accidents." Corinne paced the small office, her investigator's mind racing. "The baby's in protective custody. She's safe for now. We need to focus on proving what happened to Laurel." "Banner was there," Bram said suddenly. "He fought someone the night she died. His injuries weren't just from living on the streets. They were fresh." Crane nodded slowly. "And he's been practically glued to that baby since you found her. He knows something." "But he can't testify," Corinne said frustratedly. "We need concrete evidence." "We need Lennox," Bram realized. "He's the weak link. If we can get to him, make him crack." "He's also the most heavily guarded," Crane cautioned. "Royce Danner keeps his son on a tight leash, has ever since he was a kid." Corinne sat down heavily, the weight of their situation settling over her. "So what do we do?" "We keep digging," Crane said, "but carefully. Very carefully. No one outside this room can know about the DNA results. Not yet." Bram looked down at Banner, who stared back with those knowing eyes. "She trusted you to protect her baby," he said softly to the dog. "And now we're all going to help you keep that promise." The silence that followed was heavy with understanding. They were no longer just trying to solve a mystery. They were fighting against one of the most powerful families in the city, trying to uncover a truth that could get them all killed. Corinne gathered the DNA results, carefully securing them in her briefcase. "I'll keep these safe," she promised, "and I'll start looking deeper into Laurel's movements before she died. There has to be something we missed." "I'll work my contacts," Crane added. "Someone must have seen something the night she died. Fear of the Danners only goes so far when you're talking about a murdered mother. Bram stood, determination setting his features. And I'll keep protecting the evidence we have. They won't get to anything in this clinic without a fight. Banner barked softly, as if adding his own commitment to their cause. The sound made them all smile, despite the gravity of their situation. We're in this together now, Corinne said quietly. All of us. Crane nodded grimly. Just remember, one wrong move, one loose word, and it won't just be our lives at stake. That baby girl is counting on us to do this right. They dispersed carefully, leaving at different times and through different exits. The weight of their discovery hung heavy in the air, along with the unspoken question, how do you fight an enemy powerful enough to make people disappear? Banner watched them go, his loyalty unwavering. He had been Laurel's protector, and now he was theirs, a silent guardian in their dangerous quest for justice. The truth about the baby's parentage had changed everything, raising the stakes to life and death. But it had also strengthened their resolve. They would find justice for Laurel Pike and her daughter, no matter the cost. The autumn evening cast long shadows through the clinic windows as Corinne spread her files across Bram's desk. Her eyes were tired, but determined. 3 days of digging through records had revealed a disturbing pattern. Look at this, she said, pushing a document toward Bram. 6 years ago, a construction worker on one of Danner's sites disappeared after filing a safety complaint. His family suddenly moved out of state after receiving an unexpected inheritance from a distant relative. Bram leaned forward, Banner curled faithfully at his feet. And you're sure it was Royce? The money traced back to a shell company owned by Danner Development. Same pattern repeats 4 more times. Someone causes problems, they either disappear or suddenly have the means to go away quietly. Corinne's voice was tight with controlled anger. She pulled out another file. Then there's Laurel. She worked as an administrative assistant at Pike Industries. No relation, different spelling. Good performance reviews, steady promotions. Then suddenly she's fired for misconduct, right around the time she would have discovered she was pregnant. Let me guess. Pike Industries had dealings with the Danners? Major construction contracts, millions of dollars worth. Corinne ran a hand through her hair. Royce doesn't just eliminate problems, he buries them under so much money and paperwork that no one looks too closely. The baby monitor on Bram's desk crackled with soft fussing sounds. He glanced at his watch, almost feeding time. The past week of temporary medical guardianship had settled into a rhythm of bottles, diaper changes, and gentle care for the infant's healing bruises. I need to get her bottle ready, he said, standing. Come up with me? Corinne followed him to the small apartment above the clinic where he'd been staying with the baby. The space was sparse but warm, with a borrowed bassinet beside his bed and baby supplies carefully organized on every surface. As Bram prepared the formula, Corinne watched him lift the fussing infant with practiced gentleness. The baby settled instantly in his arms, tiny fingers curling around the bottle. You're good with her, Corinne observed softly. She makes it easy, Bram replied, his eyes never leaving the small face. She's so strong after everything she's been through. Just like her mother. Corinne's voice caught slightly. I found Laurel's employment records from before. Everyone loved her, described her as kind, hard-working, determined. She didn't deserve what they did to her. The baby finished her bottle, and Bram carefully shifted her to his shoulder for burping. The routine was second nature now, after countless nighttime feedings. We've got more, Corinne continued, pulling out her phone. I tracked down 3 other cases of women who worked near Lennox Danner suddenly leaving their jobs in the past 5 years. All received generous severance packages through that same shell company. Other Pregnancies? Can't prove it, but the timing fits. 9 months after each departure, large medical payments were made through offshore accounts. Banner whined softly from his spot by the bassinet, ever watchful of his small charge. The puppy had barely left the baby's side since they found her, as if understanding the gravity of his guardian role. "We need to organize all of this," Bram said, gently laying the now sleeping infant in her bassinet. "Make it impossible to ignore." Corinne nodded. "I'm building the formal case file now. Crane's helping track down witnesses, people who saw Laurel in the shelters, medical staff who treated her. We need to prove she was running from something specific." "What about the clinic break-in?" Bram asked. "Banner bit the intruder. There must be DNA evidence." "Being processed, but slowly. Lab techs keep finding equipment malfunctions when they try to run it." Corinne's frustration was evident. Royce's influence runs deep. They spent the next few hours organizing evidence, creating backup copies, and planning their legal strategy. The baby woke twice more for feeding and changing, each time settling quickly in Bram's careful hands. "You know they'll fight to take her away," Corinne said quietly, watching him soothe the infant back to sleep. "Once we file the case." "I know." Bram's voice was soft but determined. "But she deserves the truth about where she came from, about her mother's courage, and she deserves to be protected from the people who killed Laurel." Corinne gathered her files, checking that each copy was securely stored. "We'll need to move fast once we file. The Danners will throw everything they have at discrediting us. Then we'll be ready." Bram stood at the bassinet, Banner pressed against his leg. "We have truth on our side, and Laurel's story deserves to be told." The night settled around them, full of quiet determination and careful planning. In her sleep, the baby made tiny, contented sounds, safe for now in the circle of protection they had built around her. The evidence was mounting, painting a clear picture of Royce Danner's pattern of eliminating problems through any means necessary. They would have one chance to make this case stick. One opportunity to expose the truth about Laurel's death and protect her daughter from those who had killed her. The weight of that responsibility settled over them as they continued their preparations, knowing that every detail had to be perfect. For Laurel, for her baby, for justice that was long overdue. The morning of the emergency family court hearing dawned cold and gray. Bram adjusted his tie for the 10th time, the unfamiliar formality making him more nervous than he already was. In his apartment above the clinic, the baby slept peacefully in her bassinet while Banner kept his usual vigilant watch. Corinne arrived early, dressed in a professional navy suit that somehow made her look both more approachable and more formidable. "Ready?" she asked, helping Bram gather the baby's things. "As I'll ever be." He carefully lifted the infant, who barely stirred. "Banner, come." The loyal puppy followed them down the stairs, limping slightly but determined. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone facade imposing in the early morning light. Detective Crane met them at the entrance, his weathered face betraying little emotion. "Judge Matthews is presiding," he said quietly. "She's fair, but tough. Stick to the facts." Inside the courtroom, Bram's heart nearly stopped when he saw the Danner family's legal team, 5 expensive suits arranged like a wall of money and influence. Lennox Danner sat behind them, pale and twitching, while his father Royce's face remained impassive. Their attorney stood first. "Your Honor, we object to the presence of that animal in the courtroom." He pointed at Banner, who had settled protectively at Bram's feet. "The dog is material evidence in this case," Corinne countered, standing. "His behavior and injuries are directly relevant to establishing the pattern of danger to this child." Judge Matthews studied Banner thoughtfully. "The dog may stay, provided he remains calm. Ms. Lander, you may proceed. Corinne approached the stand with quiet confidence. Your Honor, the evidence will show that this infant was deliberately abandoned after suffering physical trauma, and that those responsible pose an ongoing threat to her safety. She methodically laid out the timeline. Laurel Pike's desperate flight, the discovery of the baby, the break-in at the clinic, and the suspicious death ruled as an overdose. Her voice grew passionate but remained steady as she described the pattern of young women vanishing from Danner properties. We have documentation of at least 3 other cases where women employed near Lennox Danner suddenly disappeared, followed by large payments through shell companies. In each case, the timing suggests pregnancy was involved. The Danner attorneys objected repeatedly, but Corinne had done her homework. Every statement was backed by carefully anonymized evidence that Crane had helped prepare. When it was Bram's turn to testify, he focused on what he knew best: the medical evidence. The infant showed signs of rough handling when I found her, he explained, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Bruising consistent with someone trying to silence her crying, dehydration suggesting she hadn't been fed properly for hours. He described Banner's fierce protectiveness, the dog's refusal to leave the baby even when injured. In my professional experience, animals sense danger. Banner recognized this child was at risk and acted to defend her, even attacking an intruder who tried to steal evidence from my clinic. The Danner team tried to paint him as an unqualified guardian, a veterinarian rather than a pediatrician, single, living above his workplace. But Bram's genuine care for the baby shone through, and Judge Matthews seemed to take note of how the infant had thrived in his care. Detective Crane's testimony was brief but powerful. Without directly accusing anyone, he presented evidence of tampering with the investigation into Laurel's death, suspicious gaps in security footage, and the pattern of interference with lab testing of evidence from the clinic break-in. In my 23 years of police work, he stated carefully, I have never seen such systematic obstruction of a simple investigation into an abandoned infant. The turning point came when Banner suddenly growled, a low, warning sound. Lennox Danner had shifted in his seat, making a slight movement toward the baby carrier where the infant slept. The dog's reaction was immediate and unequivocal. Judge Matthews raised her eyebrows. The dog's behavior seems quite specific, she observed, and consistent with the protective instincts described in earlier testimony. After 4 hours of testimony, the judge called a brief recess. The tension in the courtroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. Bram paced in the hallway while Corinne reviewed her notes, and Banner remained glued to the baby carrier. When court resumed, Judge Matthews didn't waste time. Based on the evidence presented, I find sufficient cause for concern regarding this child's safety. Pending full investigation into the circumstances of her abandonment and the death of Laurel Pike, the infant will remain in protective custody under Dr. Kessler's care. She fixed the Danner legal team with a stern look. Any attempt to interfere with this arrangement or the ongoing investigation will result in immediate sanctions. We will reconvene in 30 days to review progress. The victory felt both enormous and fragile. As they left the courthouse, a small group of reporters had gathered. Someone had leaked details of the hearing. Camera flashes caught Bram carrying the baby carrier, while Banner limped protectively beside them. Corinne stepped in front, shielding them from the worst of it. No comment at this time, she said firmly, guiding them toward her car. The court's ruling speaks for itself. Later, back in the safety of Bram's apartment, they allowed themselves to breathe. The baby was sleeping soundly, Banner curled beside the bassinet as always. Corinne's phone kept buzzing with notifications as the story spread. We won this round, she said quietly, but they'll be back. The media attention cuts both ways. It makes it harder for them to act quietly, but it also raises the stakes. Bram nodded, gently adjusting the baby's blanket. We'll be ready, She's worth fighting for. Detective Crane had slipped them a note before leaving the courthouse. Watch your backs. Victory makes them desperate. The warning hung in the air, tempering their relief with caution. But for now, they had achieved what mattered most, keeping the baby safe, away from those who had harmed her mother. It was a beginning, not an end, but it gave them hope. The truth was slowly coming to light, one careful piece at a time. Banner's tail thumped softly against the floor as Bram scratched his ears. Good boy, he whispered. We'll keep her safe, I promise. The courthouse victory unleashed Royce Danner's fury like a storm. Within hours, his retaliation began. First came the legal threats, a barrage of motions and petitions flooding the court. Then the subtle intimidation, black SUVs circling the clinic, mysterious phone calls in the middle of the night. Bram knew better than to take chances. He moved himself and the baby into the small apartment above his veterinary clinic, reasoning it would be safer than his house in the suburbs. The space was modest, one bedroom, a kitchenette, and a living area he'd converted into a makeshift nursery. Banner kept constant vigil, alternating between pacing the perimeter and curling protectively near the baby's crib. It's just temporary, Bram assured himself as he heated another bottle at 3 a.m. The baby, still unnamed pending the custody battle, fussed quietly in his arms. Banner watched from his post by the door, ears constantly alert for unfamiliar sounds. The nights fell into an uneasy routine. Feed the baby, catch a few hours of sleep, wake to check on patients in the clinic below. Corinne visited daily, bringing supplies and updates on the investigation. Her presence helped break the isolation, though her worried looks said more than words. The Danners are escalating, she warned during her latest visit. Royce isn't just angry, he's desperate. Be extra careful. Bram nodded, bouncing the baby gently as she drifted off against his shoulder. We've got Banner on security detail, he said, attempting to lighten the mood. The dog's tail wagged at his name, but his vigilant posture never relaxed. The attack came 3 nights later. The autumn evening had turned bitter cold, and Bram had finally managed to fall into an exhausted sleep around midnight. The baby was peaceful in her crib, and even Banner had settled onto his bed near the door. The first warning was Banner's growl, low and urgent, unlike his usual alerts. Bram's eyes snapped open, immediately aware something was wrong. The air felt thick, and there was an acrid smell that made his throat tighten. Smoke. Banner's growl turned to frantic barking as Bram leapt from bed. The smoke was seeping through the floorboards now, dark and heavy. Heat radiated from below. The clinic was burning. No, 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 Bram muttered, rushing to the baby's crib. She was awaking, starting to cry as the smoke reached her. He snatched her up, wrapping her tightly in a blanket. The stairs would be their normal escape route, but when Bram opened the apartment door, he recoiled. The stairwell was filled with rolling black smoke, orange flames visible below. The heat hit him like a physical wall. Back, he shouted to Banner, slamming the door. His mind raced. The fire escape. It was their only chance, but it was old, rarely used, and now it would be heating up from the flames below. The baby was crying in earnest now, and Banner's barking had taken on a desperate edge. Bram grabbed the diaper bag. It had bottles, formula, diapers, everything they'd need. He shoved a handful of documents into it, medical records, court papers, anything that might matter. The smoke was getting thicker. Bram could hear the crackle of flames, feel the floor growing hot beneath his feet. He wrapped a wet washcloth around the baby's face, tucked another around his own nose and mouth. Banner, come. The dog was at his side instantly as Bram approached the window leading to the fire escape. The metal platform looked stable enough, but he could feel the heat radiating from it. It would have to do. The window stuck for a terrifying moment before sliding up with a screech. Bram climbed out carefully, holding the baby tight against his chest with one arm while gripping the frame with the other. The metal groaned under his weight. Banner whimpered, hesitating at the window. "Come on, boy," Bram encouraged. "You can do it." The dog gathered himself and leaped through, landing beside Bram on the narrow platform. The fire escape swayed slightly. 3 stories up, the ground seemed impossibly far away. Smoke billowed around them, making Bram's eyes water. The baby's cries were muffled against his chest, but he could feel her tiny body trembling. Step by step, they began to descend. The metal was hot enough to feel through Bram's shoes. Banner stayed close, pressing against Bram's legs as they moved. Each step brought a new metallic groan from the structure. They were halfway down when the first section collapsed. The screech of tearing metal came with barely any warning. Bram felt the platform shift and grabbed the railing with his free hand, pulling himself and the baby back against the building wall. Banner yelped as the section below them tore away, crashing to the ground in a shower of sparks. They were trapped. The way down was gone, and smoke and flames were beginning to reach around the building's corner toward them. The baby was screaming now, and Banner's whimpers had turned to frightened howls. Bram looked down. They were still about 15 feet up, too far to jump safely while holding an infant. But staying meant certain death as the fire spread. Sirens wailed in the distance, but they wouldn't arrive in time. The heat was becoming unbearable, and Bram could feel the remaining section of fire escape beginning to pull away from the wall. He made a desperate decision. "Banner, jump!" he commanded. The dog looked at him with terrified eyes, but obeyed, leaping down to land awkwardly but safely on a pile of garbage bags below. Bram took a deep breath and held the baby even tighter. "I've got you," he whispered. "I won't let you fall." Then he lowered himself to hang from the platform by one hand, reducing the distance as much as possible. The metal gave a final groan. As the structure began to tear away from the wall, Bram pushed off, twisting in the air to take the impact on his side and protect the baby. The world spun, and then pain exploded through his shoulder and hip as he hit the garbage bags. For a moment he couldn't breathe. Then the baby's cry pierced through his daze, and he forced himself to move. She was unharmed, still wrapped securely in her blanket. Banner was there instantly, licking Bram's face, whining with concern. Staggering to his feet, Bram clutched the baby close and stumbled away from the burning building. The heat pressed against his back as years of work and memories went up in flames. But none of that mattered. The baby was safe. They were alive. Fire trucks screamed around the corner as Bram sank to his knees on the sidewalk. Banner pressed against him, shaking but steadfast. The baby's cries had softened to hiccuping sobs as Bram gently rocked her. In the orange glow of the flames, he caught movement across the street, a figure ducking into a car. Even at this distance, the expensive suit was unmistakable. Royce Danner's message was clear. This was just the beginning. The emergency room buzzed with frantic activity as medical staff swarmed around Bram. Through the haze of pain and smoke-filled lungs, he kept asking about the baby, his voice hoarse and desperate. "She's fine, Dr. Kessler," a nurse assured him for the 3rd time. "Not a scratch on her. Child Services has her under guard in the pediatric wing." Bram tried to nod, but winced as pain shot through his neck and shoulder. The adrenaline was wearing off, and every part of his body screamed in protest. 2nd-degree burns marked his back where the heat had seared through his thin t-shirt. His left hip and shoulder had taken the brunt of the landing impact, leaving him with hairline fractures that the doctors were still assessing. Banner wouldn't leave his side, having somehow convinced the hospital staff that he was necessary for Bram's treatment. The dog lay pressed against Bram's right leg, the only part of him that wasn't injured, maintaining a watchful guard even here. Hours passed in a blur of X-rays, bandages, and pain medication. They moved him to a private room as dawn began to creep over the city. Banner settled into a tight curl beneath the hospital bed, emerging only to growl at unfamiliar footsteps in the hallway. It was mid-morning when Detective Crane slipped quietly into the room, closing the door behind him. His weathered face was grim as he pulled a chair close to Bram's bed. "How bad?" Crane asked softly. Bram shifted slightly, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. "Burns on my back, fractured shoulder and hip. Doctor says I'm lucky it wasn't worse." He coughed, his lungs still raw from the smoke. "The baby?" "Safe. Corinne hasn't left her side." Crane glanced at the door before leaning closer. "Listen, I've got something you need to see." He pulled out his phone and held it where Bram could view the screen. Security, footage from a building across from the clinic, played, showing a man in dark clothes approaching with a gas can. The timestamp read 2:15 in the morning. "Watch his right hand," Crane instructed. Bram squinted at the grainy image. The arsonist's right hand was wrapped in gauze, clearly favoring it as he worked. The memory of Banner's attack during the break-in flashed through Bram's mind. "That's our guy from the clinic," Bram said. "Banner bit him." Crane nodded. "His name is Marcus Wells. Known associate of Royce Danner, does his cleanup work. We've never been able to pin anything on him before, but this time..." He tapped the phone screen. "This time we've got him on camera. And better yet, we can match the dog bite to prove he was behind both attacks." Banner's ears perked up at the mention of the bite, and he emerged from under the bed to press his nose against Crane's hand. The detective scratched the dog's ears. "Good boy. You gave us exactly what we needed." The door opened again, and Corinne slipped in. Her face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes blazed as she took in Bram's condition. Without a word, she crossed to his bed and gripped his uninjured hand. "I should have been there," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "I should have known Royce would try something like this." "Nobody could have predicted he'd go this far," Bram replied, squeezing her hand. "How's our girl?" Corinne's expression softened. "Perfect. Not even a cough from the smoke. She's got your guardian angel instincts." She tried to smile, but couldn't quite manage it. "When I heard about the fire, when I thought I might lose both of you..." Her voice broke, and she turned away, brushing angrily at her eyes. Crane tactfully became very interested in his phone, giving them a moment. Bram tugged gently on her hand until she looked at him again. "Hey, we're okay. We're all okay." "This time," Corinne said, her jaw set in a familiar, determined line. "But Royce Danner just tried to murder you and that baby. He's not going to stop until he either succeeds or we stop him." She straightened up, though she didn't let go of Bram's hand. "I'm done playing defense. We're taking him down." Crane cleared his throat. "With this footage and the bite evidence, we can get Wells to flip on Royce. No hired thug is going to take an attempted murder charge to protect his boss." "Good," Corinne said, "because I've spent all morning pulling every file I could find. Missing persons reports that dead end near Danner properties, suspicious accidents, sudden relocations of problem tenants. Once we start connecting the dots..." "We'll bury him," Bram finished. The pain medication was making him drowsy, but he fought to stay alert. "The baby. We need to make sure she's protected. If he's willing to burn down a building..." "I've got 2 officers I trust outside her room," Crane assured him, "and I've called in some favors to get extra security here for you, too." Corinne's phone buzzed, and she checked it quickly. "The baby's awake. I should get back." She hesitated, then leaned down and pressed a quick kiss to Bram's forehead. "Don't you dare scare me like that again." "Yes, ma'am," Bram murmured, managing a small smile despite his injuries. After she left, Crane stood and stretched. "Get some rest. I'll be back tonight with the paperwork to take Wells's statement." He paused at the door. "You did good, Kessler. Saved that little girl twice now." "Banner helped," Bram said, his eyes growing heavy. The dog's tail thumped against the floor at the mention of his name. As Bram drifted off to sleep, he could still feel the ghost of Corinne's kiss on his forehead, could still hear the fierce determination in her voice. They had proof now. Proof that Royce Danner had tried to murder them all. The game was changing, moving from defense to offense. Banner settled more firmly against the bed, his protective instincts undiminished by their ordeal. In the quiet hospital room, as pain medication pulled him under, Bram's last conscious thought was of the baby. Safe, unharmed, and watched over by the fierce woman who had somehow become as important to him as the child they were fighting to protect. 3 days after the fire, Corinne stood in the dimly lit storage room of Hope Haven Women's Shelter, her hands trembling slightly as she held the key to locker number 216. The shelter coordinator had finally approved her request to access Laurel Pike's belongings after much bureaucratic back and forth. The metal locker creaked open, revealing a small collection of possessions that represented the final chapter of Laurel Pike's life. A faded backpack, a few pieces of worn clothing, and there, wrapped carefully in a plastic bag to protect it from moisture, was a navy blue spiral notebook. Corinne's heart raced as she carefully removed the journal. She had hoped for evidence, but this was Laurel's voice, her story in her own words. Taking a deep breath, she opened to the first page. The handwriting was neat but hurried, as if Laurel had been desperate to get her thoughts down on paper. "I met Lennox at the coffee shop where I worked. He came in every morning, always kind, always leaving big tips. I didn't know he was a Danner then. Didn't know what that would mean for both of us." Corinne sank onto a nearby folding chair, immersed in Laurel's words. The journal detailed everything. Stolen moments in Lennox's downtown apartment, promises of a future together, the joy when she first discovered she was pregnant. But then came the darker entries, starting the day Royce Danner discovered their relationship. "Lennox's father came to the coffee shop today. He waited until my shift ended, cornered me in the parking lot. Said his son had a bright future that I wasn't going to ruin. Offered me money to disappear. When I refused, his smile changed. Accidents happen to problem people," he said, "especially in this city." The threats escalated from there. Laurel lost her job through Royce's interference. Her apartment lease was suddenly terminated. She found herself on the streets, moving from shelter to shelter, desperately trying to protect her unborn child. "I know they're watching me. Royce's men follow me everywhere. Lennox won't answer my calls anymore, but I won't let them hurt my baby. I'll die before I let that happen." Corinne wiped tears from her eyes, her hands shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. The final entries were frantic, describing men closing in, the desperate plan to hide the baby where she would be found by someone who could protect her. Back at the hospital, Corinne found Bram awake in his room, his burns healing but still painful. Banner lay alert at the foot of his bed. She wordlessly handed him the journal, watching his face as he read. "My God," he whispered, looking up at her with haunted eyes. "She knew they were going to kill her. She planned everything, even making sure Banner would stay with the baby." Corinne nodded, her voice tight. "She wrote about training him to guard the bag, knowing he'd lead whoever found them to help." "She was brilliant, Bram. She didn't just die, she orchestrated her daughter's rescue." Detective Crane arrived as they were discussing the journal, his weathered face grave as he examined the evidence. "This Combined with the arson footage and Wells in custody, we've got them. Both of them. Royce for orchestrating everything, Lennox as an accessory. Lennox knew? Bram asked, his voice hard. The journal makes it clear he knew what his father was planning, Corinne said. He chose his inheritance over his child's life, over Laurel's life. Crane carefully placed the journal in an evidence bag. I'm taking this straight to the DA. With Wells ready to testify about the fire and this filling in the rest, he shook his head. Royce Danner's empire is about to crumble. Corinne moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. She deserved so much better, she said softly, but she made sure her daughter would be safe, made sure we'd have what we needed to bring them down. Banner whined softly, as if sensing their emotions. Bram reached down to scratch his ears. She chose well, he said, both with where she left the baby and with making sure Banner would stay to protect her. This ends now, Corinne said, turning back to face them with determined eyes. We're going to make sure Laurel's sacrifice wasn't in vain. Her daughter will be safe, and the men who killed her will face justice. In the days following the journal's discovery, preparations for both the criminal case and custody hearings intensified. Bram insisted on attending every meeting, despite the pain from his burns and the doctor's recommendations for rest. You need to heal, Corinne urged, watching him wince as he shifted in his wheelchair during their strategy session at his temporary apartment. I need to be part of this, Bram replied, his voice firm despite his obvious discomfort. I owe it to Laurel, to the baby. Corinne's expression softened as she watched him studying the case files. His dedication, even while injured, touched something deep within her. She found herself reaching out to adjust his blanket, her hand lingering on his shoulder longer than necessary. Banner, who hadn't left Bram's side since the fire, perked up as the court-appointed therapy dog evaluator arrived. The evaluator watched intently as Banner demonstrated his gentle nature with the baby during supervised visits, noting his protective instincts and calm demeanor. He's remarkable, the evaluator said, making notes. His bond with both the infant and Dr. Kessler is extraordinary. Having him present during the proceedings could be incredibly beneficial for everyone involved. Corinne smiled as Banner rested his head on Bram's knee. He's been there since the beginning. It feels right that he should be there at the end. Not the end, Bram corrected softly, meeting Corinne's eyes. The beginning. For all of us. The moment stretched between them, filled with unspoken understanding. Through all the danger and darkness, something beautiful had grown. A connection neither of them had expected, but both now cherished. The DA wants to meet tomorrow, Corinne said finally, breaking the silence but maintaining eye contact. Are you sure you're up for it? Bram reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. With you there? Absolutely. Banner wagged his tail, moving to sit between them, as if confirming their unity. The loyal dog who had once guarded a desperate mother's last hope now stood ready to help secure justice for her memory and a future for her child. The courtroom hummed with tension as Royce Danner took the stand, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the pressure of the moment. His expensive suit and commanding presence seemed designed to intimidate, but there was a slight tremor in his hands that betrayed his nerves. Ms. Pike was a troubled woman, Royce declared, his voice dripping with practiced concern. Drug problems, mental instability, it's tragic, but my family had nothing to do with her death. From his place near the front, Banner lay quietly beside the baby's carrier until Lennox approached the stand to testify. The moment Lennox began speaking, the dog's demeanor changed dramatically. His ears flattened, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. The judge had to call for order as Banner's reaction drew all eyes in the courtroom. Corinne's questioning of Lennox was relentless but precise. Mr. Danner, Can you explain why your limited edition shirt was found wrapped around the infant? Lennox's facade began to crack. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he glanced nervously at his father. I don't remember. And your father's response when you told him about Laurel's pregnancy? I can't. Lennox's hands shook as he gripped the witness stand. Did your father tell you he would take care of the problem? He said it would go away, Lennox blurted out, his voice breaking. He said he'd handle it like all the others. I never thought he'd… Royce surged to his feet. Shut up, you fool! The courtroom erupted in chaos. Royce's outburst echoed through the chamber, his face contorted with rage. Everything I did was to protect this family's legacy. That woman and her bastard child would have destroyed everything I built. The judge banged his gavel repeatedly as Royce continued his tirade, inadvertently confirming his role in Laurel's death and the subsequent attempts to eliminate all evidence, including the arson attack. Combined with the arsonist's earlier testimony and Laurel's heartbreaking journal entries, the Danners' carefully constructed defense crumbled completely. After the dramatic courtroom revelation, justice moved swiftly. Royce Danner was charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy, and attempted murder, while Lennox faced lesser charges as an accessory. The medical examiner revised Laurel Pike's death certificate, officially recognizing what Bram and Corinne had known all along. She had been murdered trying to protect her baby. 6 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, Bram stood outside his rebuilt veterinary clinic. The fresh paint gleamed in the morning sun, and new windows sparkled where the old ones had shattered in the fire. The restoration had taken time, but like everything else in his life, it had emerged stronger than before. Banner sat alertly at his feet, his torn ear and slight limp permanent reminders of his loyalty. Though still wary of strangers, the dog had grown confident in his role as protector and companion. His eyes rarely left baby Laurel Grace, who was snuggled securely in Bram's arms. "There's my girl," Corinne called out, crossing the street with 2 coffee cups in hand. Her sharp features softened as she approached her family, a word that still amazed her every time she thought it. She handed Bram his coffee and reached for Laurel Grace, who gurgled happily at the sight of her. "Someone's ready for her breakfast," Bram said, smiling as he watched Corinne cradle their daughter. The baby's name honored both her birth mother's courage and the grace that had brought them all together. At 8 months old, she was thriving, with bright eyes and a laugh that could light up the darkest day. Banner wagged his tail, pressing against Corinne's legs as she balanced baby and coffee. The dog who had once survived the streets alongside Laurel Pike now had a permanent home, a family to protect, and a purpose that went beyond mere survival. "Ready to head up?" Corinne asked, nodding toward the newly renovated apartment above the clinic. They had decided to make it their home, turning tragedy into new beginnings. The walls that had once trapped Bram in flames now sheltered a family born from unlikely circumstances. Bram looked at them. His fierce, principled partner, their beloved daughter, and the loyal dog who had brought them together. His once solitary life had transformed into something he never could have imagined that fateful night when a frightened puppy refused to let go of a canvas bag. "Home," he said simply, holding the door for his family. Banner trotted ahead up the stairs, performing his usual security check. The morning sun streamed through new windows, warming the space that had become so much more than just a place to live. As they settled into their morning routine, the quiet contentment in the air spoke of justice served, love found, and a future built on the foundation of doing what was right, no matter the cost. For Bram, Corinne, Banner, and little Laurel Grace, their hard-won peace was all the sweeter for the battles they had fought to achieve it. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.